So this morning I am trying my hand at going live. I had avoided using StreamYard because I didn't want to pay for it and didn't want to see the little logo, but it actually is much easier than the other systems that I've tried for going live. I'm going to hang out for a minute or two here and just chat while I wait to see if anyone shows up. The idea was this would be an interactive experience. But if I don't have an audience large enough to do that, then I will simply walk you through the process that I wanted to do with everyone as we talk about spreads today. So when we talk about spreads, we're talking about the way or order in which we lay down our tarot cards in a reading. And quite often, when we're reading, we want to set a limit or a direction for how our spread will go. And that's why we use spreads. It's if we sometimes can get carried away when we're reading, and especially for myself, if I'm pulling cards at random and I just keep pulling and pulling and I don't stop at the right place, right? And start getting cards that make no sense to me in the context of what I was asking. But with a spread, I have a set number of cards, and those cards represent specific things. And that can be rewarding in its own way. And spreads give us a general direction and theme for our reading. So if you, for example, want to practice reading and you don't really have a topic, spreads are great for general readings because the questions and the representations of the specific placements in the spread give us information themselves. Spreads tend to center around a theme. Sometimes that theme is, for example, the seasons of the year. We might have them centered around the moon's phases. This is a traditional Celtic cross. This is actually the one that I enjoy working with. There are actually so many versions of the Celtic cross out there. I don't use the Celtic cross very frequently. In fact, maybe once a year, because I tend to find readings with more than 5 to 7 cards overwhelming. So I try to stick to readings with fewer cards if I can. There are spreads that are specifically for daily reading. And there are topical spreads. So, for example, the Toxic Workplace spread. This one happens to be by the Butterfly Witch. You might find elemental readings. This is very reminiscent of a 5-card reading for elemental readings that I have seen. It's called Transformation, and it uses the butterfly as well as the elements, and adds 3 cards for your issue, an obstacle, and an outcome. It's actually a fun spread. Let's see what else we got here. So here's the unicorn spread. This is actually a fun spread to read a little bit about your best self, okay? Because sometimes we can be down on ourselves, right? This was a fun spread that we did during Tarot one month, which is called the Drunk Reader Spread, and there are 3 cards there, just to give a little insight into what's going on with you. You can also have them related around things like pride, and even, annual spreads for your birthday and for other events like New Year's and that type of thing. But also we have spreads that can be one-offs, like it's only for this situation at this time. And basically that type of spread would be one where we know our topic, we know what we want answers to, and we simply list those things. And we may list 4 or 5 different questions or themes within that idea that we want to know about, and then we create a spread around that. And that happens a lot in my planner. I will just start listing the things I want to know, and then I'll kind of give them all a card, numerical value. This will be the first card, second card, etc. And that's what some would call a situational spread. But when you want to go a little bit further, you want to like make a spread to use on a regular basis. What does that look like? Well, I'm going to share here some spreads that I have done. It's something that I enjoy doing. And again, it can be as simple as just writing down a list of questions or concepts related to your reading and using those as your spread points. Or it can be as complicated as creating a spread to use over and over again. So we're going to be looking at some spreads that I've created. The first one that I ever created was this spread, which is called the River Tarot spread. This was actually for a situation in my life, but as I started working on it, I thought this is something that I think we could use routinely or over and over again. And it's a 5-card spread, and it used the river as the theme because the river is very important to me in my personal life. I grew up on the river, and this was particularly about a relationship in my family, so the river just made sense because that was an integral part of our life. And there are 5 questions here. So how did I come up with the questions related to the river or creating flow in my personal relationship? Well, there are a few ways. One is I knew things that were bothering me, so I added those to my list. I also looked at other spreads about personal relationships to see what kinds of topics they included. I then tried to put things in an order that made sense with my theme. And so we have the source of our concern, i.e., the source of the river, our hope for a restored flow, keeping the river going, how to restore it, that's our action, and then our outcome of the journey, so our result, and looking downstream. This was warnings, things to be concerned about in the future. And all I did was create little boxes and put the prompts in them on the river, and that was my River Tarot spread. This was the first spread I ever did. I've used it several times. I do enjoy it. I've also done some other spreads on themes. Ethany had been doing a challenge where she had people do spreads for specific cards. This one's for the Page of Swords. And again, I ended up with 5 prompts for my spread and ended up doing it in the a butterfly shape. And those prompts each correlate to what I see as an aspect of the Page of Swords or the theme of the Page of Swords. The Page of Swords being a young, intellectual, a student perhaps, someone who is a little bit carefree but really eager to get going, as you can see for their movement. And I related it to the butterfly theme. So first we had our emerging, which is, this is the action, the project that we're going to undertake, what our page is messaging us about. And then the chrysalis is, where we are holding back right now, what we are doing to build for the future. And then taking flight, the emerging from our chrysalis into the action, the project, the plan, that event that we're moving towards. Our warnings, avoiding spider webs. And then beware the changing wind, bringing in that air element again into the spread. I also did the challenge for the 4 of Cups, which I used a little fish there and did 4 prompts for it. And those were some of my early ones. Now, I've also done some where I just drew them. This one is from uh, the holiday season, December last year. At some point, I'll probably make it a computer graphic, but right now I just decided, can I create a spread out of a Christmas tree? Which I had a tree up for the first time in a long time, and I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. And I actually put a little ornament in each slot just to kind of represent the different questions. And so I looked at the tree as a tree. Trees grow out of the ground and develop over time. Um, so I included our foundation, which is where we are. Things to be pruned, those things that are growing out. Um, and then, but what to let go, and then areas to grow, what we need to embrace, and then our hope. So, where we're going, that tippy top of the tree, how tall it's going to be. Um, and it's a lot of fun coming up with the questions and then finding artwork to go with them, and just generally having fun. Um, and some of these I use regularly, and some of them not so much. I want to share a couple of spreads with you. Sometimes we now see things based on movies and television. This one is from Ethany, the Star Wars tarot spread, which I actually thought was really cool. And then this one is from one of my favorite Trek shows from Tarot Nerds. It's actually based on Star Trek Voyager. And each of these prompts, which are 9, that's a little much for me normally, but I have done this spread. It actually relates directly to the personality of each of these characters in the show, which is kind of a fun way to do a spread. Um, this is probably the spread that I do the most. This is actually the Eisenhower grid spread, which people in the business world will know as a way of making decisions about prioritization. And I found it very useful for using the tarot for making decisions and gaining insight in a general way to topics that people may not have specific questions about. And sometimes this leads to specific questions. So, for example, someone had asked about their love life, just trying to get a feel of what's going on with it. And so we actually did the spread, and it brought up a second question, which was, okay, well, if this is true, what we were talking about in this spread, then why does it appear things are going contrary to this, right? So we pulled 3 more cards and we talked about that. And so sometimes your initial spread, when you start with a small group of cards like this, can be a jumping point off. Um, Again, you have to practice good boundaries with people so that they don't end up asking you for a 10-card reading when they've paid for a 3-card reading. Um, but I find that this is a great all-purpose spread, and I enjoy working with it, at least starting out with a client. And this is the spread that I will do if you request an email reading from me, 9 times out of 10. So one of the things I wanted to do today was actually make a spread. And since I don't have audience participation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the process through which I created a spread for a challenge recently. And that spread was for Mercury retrograde and how our where we could work with our inner child for basically healing. And so what I began with, I wanted to begin with the theme of a child. So you're going to see where I put a head of a child here. And then I decided, okay, what are the questions or the things that I needed to do for that? And you'll see here where I wrote this out. I drew it out in my notebook. And the 5 areas I wanted to talk about was, of course, a memory. So this is the issue. This is what we're going to look at up here at the top of our head, right? That thing on our mind. And then how we're looking at that memory. And I put it here by the eyes because I thought that was a great way to portray that. But how do we perceive that memory? And then what is the truth behind that? What is it in the back of our mind that we know to be true, but that we don't want to accept? Um, and then where you could be. If you actually heal from this memory, this trauma, whatever it might be in your mind, one, how you can accept that truth is going to get you where you want to be. And then five, the result of accepting that truth. Um, One of the things that I do when I'm creating a tarot spread, apart from listing the ideas that I have down on paper, is I actually would do a tarot spread about the spread. So, like, I'll say I want to include 5 cards for this spread. I would then do a 5 card reading, and I would see what impression I get from those cards as to what that prompt should be. In this case, I actually had these ideas down in a big picture kind of way. So when I drew the cards, I was able to look at the card in light of the prompt I already have and then tweak it. And so sometimes it's simply a matter of laying out the cards to get my spread in my head and the ideas of those specific cards. Um, Another thing I like to do is when I have a question come up and I just can't find a spread for I'll just make it up on the fly. And like I said, we'll take our questions that we have from for the tarot, and we'll list them out and we'll turn that into our spread. So I don't always end up creating something pretty with graphics and um, formalizing it. It may just be a couple of questions in my notebook that I then spread out cards for. So spreads come in handy for a variety of reasons. For me, the biggest one is having organization to my reading, knowing where I'm going and where I'm headed, and also for reading for other people, limiting what I'm offering them. I want to offer them what they need to know, but I don't want to be reading for the same person all day long, right? And we know how that goes. People will ask multiple questions over and over again about the same topic, or even try to start new topics on you. And so, in that way, spreads can be very helpful, at least for me. I hope some of this has been useful. I had really looked forward to having some people on and coming up with some questions together and then creating a spread together. But I'm happy that I got to walk you through my process, and I um, am happy that the live process is working for me. Next weekend, I'm going to come on and I'm going to be talking about creating a tarot card. And so join me. Let's create a tarot card together next weekend. We'll just be doing one, but I want to talk about what we like about cards, what we want to see in cards, and put one together. Um, so until next time, good journeys.